With a new defensive coordinator in hand, we'll discuss changes that should be in store for the Chargers defense. Once again, scribes are incorrectly predicting that the Dodgers will move to a six-man starting rotation, and a USC official goes on record to finally support Reggie Bush. Good morning. I'm James. This is your daily dose of sports and snark for the greatest sports city in the world, Los Angeles. This is the faithful Angelenos morning report. So it is January 28th, 2024. I am still stuck for another day in St. Loser misery. And it is miserable out here. But on the plus side, it is the Lord's Day, it is Sunday, and it's a good time to thank Him for the blessings that you have in your life, such as LA sports. And if you like being in the know about LA, clickety-clack the like button. Clickety-clack the subscribe button. There's a notification bell, hit that, it'll let you know when we drop new content. Sharing is caring, let people know we exist, and by all means comment, because you should know this by now. I try to get back to every one of you. Now before we go through the news and notes, a look at the scoreboard. In an epic battle up in Northern California, LeBron James would not be denied. Scored 36 points. He sank 2 free throws with 1 second left to go in double overtime to lift the Lakers to a 145-144 victory over the Golden State Warriors. Anthony Davis scored 29 points. D'Angelo Russell added 28. The Lakers are finally back over 500. Meanwhile, in a game that Tyronn Lue called a measuring stick, the Clippers wound up leading by as many as 36 points. They totally answered the charge. Kawhi Leonard led the Clippers with 26, and they defeated the Boston Celtics 115-96. Meanwhile, UCLA 65, USC 50. Dylan Andrews led the Bruins with 20 points. UCLA, it was their first win at the Galen Center since 2018. They had a 22-4 run to close out the first half and essentially put the game away. And frankly, let's just call it for what it is. Everybody stunk up the joint for USC. There's no other way of looking at it. Osiah Sellers led the Trojans with 10. Meanwhile, today, oddly enough, in St. Loser, the Kings are in town. They're going to play the Blues at 11 a.m. The Kings have recalled Alex Turcotte from the Ontario Reign. Now, as we've previously discussed on Faithful Angelenos, Jesse Minter has left the University of Michigan. He's going to join Jim Harbaugh in Southern California with the Chargers as the Bolts defensive coordinator. This matters a ton because the Chargers defense was an utter abomination under Brandon Staley. And what makes that even more infuriating is that Brandon Staley came to the team as a defensive mastermind, particularly with the work that he's done with the Rams. So who winds up replacing Staley becomes vital. And what would Minter do that Brandon Staley did not do, which will hopefully change the fortunes for the Bolts? We're going to talk about that a little bit. So there's a number of things that Minter allegedly does that Staley does not. Wolverines players said that Minter connects very well with people, and that was obviously a knock on Staley. Also, whereas Staley was primarily an X's and O's guy, just drawing up all kinds of things on the board and hoping everybody would follow along, Minter basically uses 4 pillars, as they like to call it, 4 pillars to defensive success. One is effort. Duh, we get it. You want to play hard. Okay, fine. That's kind of obvious. Another one, though, is called obnoxious communication, which we'll get to in just a moment. A third pillar is block destruction. And the fourth is ball disruption. Now, those are enhancements to the scheme that the Wolverines ran before Jesse Minter became the defensive coordinator. The scheme itself, the plays, were originally designed by current Ravens defensive coordinator, Mike Macdonald. Now, so what we're saying is it's the way Macdonald X's and O'd, even though he's with Baltimore, combined with Minter's style of communication and what he's going to demand of the players from this playbook unify it, and that will create a new Chargers defense. So we'll start off with McDonald. What does McDonald do with the Ravens? That, of course, he also did with Michigan. Well, you're going to see the Ravens run a lot of zone. Now, the Chargers ran a lot of zone with Staley, but the Chargers zone was extremely complex. It was called cover 6, and for those of you who don't know exactly what a cover 6 is, you split the field in half. On one side, your defensive backs play a cover 2. On the other side, they're going to play cover 4. 4 plus 2 equals 6, cover 6. Very complex because it depends on what the formation looks like when the offense breaks the huddle. And oh, by the way, offenses tend to go in motion, which changes the look of the formation, so that theoretically could change what was cover 2 on one side. It gets very complex is what I'm getting at. And the Chargers players could not pick it up. So while it is true that the Ravens will run zone, and the Wolverines will run a lot of zone, and presumably the Chargers will follow suit, they're not going to go crazy on cover 6. They'll probably run Tampa 2, which is obviously very basic, or cover 3, again, very basic. You'll see 4-man pressures from the defensive front instead of all-out blitzes. They call it safe pressure. And the reason they call it safe pressure is that it doesn't expose the back line to big plays. Remember, the Chargers defense was notorious for giving up explosive plays last year. So where does this differ from Staley? Well, a lot of it is extremely obvious. Because Staley, again, was designing cover 6, and he was X's and O'ing, and he was drawing up all of these complex ideas and trying to translate it for his players in a short amount of time, and there were things that just fell through the cracks. McDonald's scheme is simplified, and what Minter wants to do is he wants everyone who's on the field to communicate these ideas to the point of being obnoxious. To the point of being obnoxious. And that also includes in practice. In other words, he encourages players to go to their assistant coach and say, Coach, I don't think this is going to work, because if I go here, then this player is going to do this. They want the communication on the field. They want it in the practice. They want it in the film room. And Brandon Staley, once he was done X's and O'ing, frankly, that was the be-all, end-all. But having said that, it sounds easy, but there are problems that the Chargers are going to have to overcome during the offseason. For example, we mentioned block destruction. Do you believe the Chargers have the personnel up front to destroy blocks? Right? Because to me, that implies defensive tackle. The Chargers had an obvious weakness on their roster at defensive tackle. So that would be one problem. We could assume they can get the effort. We could presume that they're going to wind up being obnoxious with communication. Maybe they'll get ball disruption, but block destruction is one of those 4 pillars. And I can't tell you that the Chargers are going to have that. By the way, in other Chargers news, Philadelphia has moved quickly. They have hired former Chargers offensive coordinator Kellen Moore to have the same position with the Eagles. This is according to the NFL Network. Once again, there is chatter among baseball writers about the Dodgers utilizing a 6-man starting pitching rotation. This has been a consistent rumor with the Dodgers because scribes noticed how Andrew Friedman built a team. He would go excess on starting pitching, and the scribes are thinking, well, if you're signing all these starting pitchers, you got to put it to use, right? Well, here's the thing. The Dodgers do put it to use. They just don't do it in a 6-man rotation because most of these pitchers that Andrew Friedman signed have a long history of injuries. So in other words, if I were to give you a 5-man rotation now, let's just spitball it out. No particular order. You'd probably have, you would have Yoshinobu Yamamoto. That's obvious. Bobby Miller. I think that's obvious. Tyler Glasnow. Newly signed James Paxton. Now you could easily say, well, wait a minute, James, you haven't mentioned Walker Buehler yet. Exactly. He would be in a 5-man rotation, but he could not be in a 6-man rotation. And here's why. You have to trust that Walker Buehler will be available to pitch. We don't even know if he's going to be able to start the regular season on time. So he's not going to be part of a 6-man rotation. Instead, you'd be talking about maybe plugging in Emmett Sheehan to get that 5th starter. And by the way, Walker Buehler is not the only guy on the current Dodgers roster with a lengthy injury history. They traded for Tyler Glasnow and signed him. Tyler Glasnow, formerly of Tampa Bay, has a lengthy injury history. Going to a 6-man rotation is foolhardy. They're going to keep the extra starting pitchers to fill in the holes that are eventually going to arise when these pitchers get hurt. And if you think I might be exaggerating a little bit, all you have to do is look at some of the other pitchers that the Dodgers are hopeful that get healthy this year. Dustin May. What about Clayton Kershaw if he decides to resign? Do you see where I'm going here? A 6-man rotation is a foolhardy prediction. USC's athletic director, Jen Cohen, says she wants Reggie Bush to get his Heisman Trophy back. Now, Bush forfeited the trophy. Back in 2010, it was discovered that his family was given improper benefits while he was balling out for the Trojans. Back then, and I would presume it was to avoid harsher sanctions from the NCAA, the school basically cut all ties with Reggie Bush. For example, you go to a Trojans game, you see all those numbers on the one side of the Coliseum where the peristyle is. Bush had his number there. It's not now. Cohen says that she would love to put his jersey in the Coliseum. This is something she told to a USC show called the Peristyle Podcast. Now, she's going to use whatever influence she can, but it's going to be a tough road to hoe to get Bush his Heisman back. But the good thing about it, the relations between Bush and the school that he clearly still loves representing is thawing. And that's a beautiful thing. We are getting conflicting interpretations of a social media post from USC linebacker Mason Cobb. The post strongly hints that he's going to play another year of college football, but as a couple of scribes pointed out, it did not specifically say in the social media post that he was playing for USC. My guess, and it's only a guess, is that these people are splitting hairs. By the way, Cobb probably will return to USC. That's just my guess. He was extremely productive with the Trojans. He had 85 tackles last year. Meanwhile, bad news for UCLA football. Blake Tabarachi, who was a 3-star linebacking commitment for this fall, has withdrawn his commitment to come to UCLA. He's from Park City, Utah. You could imagine, for example, that the Utes are probably knocking on his door. There were as many as 7 schools that were seeking his services since his name started to rise in high school. Raheem Morris has hired Rams passing game coordinator Zach Robinson to be Atlanta's offensive coordinator, according to the NFL Network. He's got his work cut out for him. He absolutely revitalized the Rams offense. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. But he had tools in LA, not the least of which being Matthew Stafford. LA was 8th in scoring in the NFL last year. Atlanta, 26th. So good luck, Mr. Robinson. You're going to need it. PJ Tucker has not played in 2 months for the Clippers. Now, there is this random scribe out in Arizona who claims that Tucker would ask for his contract to be bought out so that he could immediately sign with the Phoenix Suns. To which I say, big whoop. I don't have a problem with PJ Tucker, but and I realize he wants to play. But what the hell makes Phoenix the go-to destination? Anyone? Confession. I acknowledge that I do not watch that much women's soccer. I don't. It's because I watch MLS, USL, the Premier League, UEFA Champions League. That is a lot of soccer. But regardless of the gender of the sport, whether it's men's or women's tennis, baseball or softball, men's and women's soccer, I will always respect how much an athlete sacrifices to do what they love. Take Kristen Press of Angel City FC. The lady tore an ACL in a club match 2 years ago. And you're figuring, you know what? That sucks. Because you got to go under the knife. Surgery sucks. Why would you want to do that? Well, even worse for her, there were complications. So Press didn't have one surgery to the knee. She had four surgeries to the knee. And because of that, not only did she miss the remainder of 2022, she missed 2023 in its entirety. Even worse, she's part of the U.S. women's national team. She missed a World Cup due to these 4 procedures. So she put a post on social media yesterday. She said she's not training with Angel City just yet, but her individual training is coming along quite nicely. So hopefully she'll be back on the pitch doing what she loves. And I gotta tell you, again, even if you don't watch women's soccer, on some level, you have to respect somebody who's willing to put themselves through that many procedures. 4 surgeries. Put some respect on that woman's name, Kristen Press. But you let me know what you think in the comments thread. Talk to me what you think could happen with the Chargers defense. Or maybe you actually do think the Dodgers might go to a 6-man rotation. And if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe to Faithful Angelenos. We're talking LA sports every single day here. Thank you for watching. I'm James. We'll be back tomorrow. Faithful Angelenos is a Kian Corte El Queso production. Take care.